There's a buzz starting to build around the Los Angeles Lakers, and it's not just noise. For the sake of keeping the fans talking, it feels like the front office is gearing up to make some kind of move this weekend. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a blockbuster trade is imminent or that a big-name free agent is ready to sign on the dotted line. Sometimes the shift starts with something subtle like a roster cut, and all eyes right now are on Shake Milton. His time with the Lakers could be coming to an end sooner rather than later, with expectations pointing toward him being waived by Saturday at the latest. And while that may not sound like much, on the surface in the NBA, even small moves can be the spark that ignites a bigger shift. Releasing Shake Milton isn't just about opening up a roster spot, it's about what that open spot could mean. Teams don't clear a player unless they're thinking ahead. It signals that someone else is likely already being considered, that pieces are being moved on the board behind the scenes. So even if this starts off with Milton being cut, don't be surprised if a new signing follows closely behind. It might not be a dramatic one-for-one exchange like Milton out someone else in within minutes, but the momentum is definitely building for action. The timing of all this also isn't coincidental. The Lakers are wrapping up their summer league play with only a consolation game left against the Denver Nuggets. Once that's in the books, the team's focus shifts entirely back to off-season operations. This is when things usually heat up across the league. Executives have spent the last couple of weeks in Las Vegas watching young prospects, networking, and casually laying the groundwork for bigger conversations. Summer League is a weird time in that sense. There's a lot of basketball being played, but there's just as much front office maneuvering happening in the background. And now, with that winding down, it's back to the business of building a team ready to compete in October. Rob Pelinka, the Lakers' general manager, has been active behind the scenes during this stretch. There were reports even before Summer League tipped off that he'd be working the phones, testing the waters for trades and signings, and now we're entering the phase where some of that groundwork might actually lead to results. Typically, trades and deals don't go down during the heart of Summer League. That's when conversations happen, ideas get floated, and GMs feel each other out. But once the games are over and everyone flies back home, that's when the gears start to turn. The setting in Vegas creates a unique environment, less pressure, more in-person interaction, and the kind of atmosphere where real business can be set up over a handshake and a chat courtside. So now that we're hitting that post-Summer League stretch, don't be shocked if the Lakers make a quick move. Even if it's not a major trade, a signing feels very possible. Let's say Shake Milton gets waived on Saturday. That opens the door for something to happen as soon as Sunday or Monday. One name that keeps surfacing in conversations is DeAnthony Melton. Right now, he might be the most complete free agent still on the market. He's young, he defends, he hits shots, and more importantly, he fits into what the Lakers are trying to build long-term. He wouldn't just be a short-term plug, he's the kind of guy who could grow with this roster over the next few years, someone that could be part of the bigger picture if things go right. But there are other names in play too. Josh Okogie has been popping up more and more in the Lakers' orbit, and for good reason. He fits a specific need that the team has been trying to fill for years: point of attack defense. He's not just a decent defender, he's elite in that role. He can switch, he's physical, and he makes life hard for opposing guards. Standing at 6'4" with a wingspan pushing 7 feet, he brings the kind of defensive tools that every team is desperate for, but especially one like the Lakers who need more grit on the perimeter. Think about the construction of this current Lakers roster. Scoring isn't really the problem. With players like LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, and Andre Ayton leading the charge, putting points on the board shouldn't be an issue. What the Lakers need are those glue guys, the role players, who do the dirty work, fight through screens, dive for loose balls, and play defense like their lives depend on it. That's why someone like Okogie makes so much sense. He's not flashy. He's not going to drop 30 points out of nowhere, but he gives you something the Lakers don't have enough of right now, and that's toughness at the guard position. Now, Okogie isn't the only defender on the board. There's also Gary Payton too, and yes, he brings that same defensive intensity, but with a slightly different profile. Payton is more compact, more explosive, but not as long as Okogie. That wingspan matters, especially when you're talking about defending the league's taller guards, and even some wings. Okogie has the ability to switch across 3 positions, and occasionally even match up with smaller forwards, while Payton is more of a straight-up guard defender. Still, he'd be a great addition for the Lakers, especially if they can land him on a veteran minimum deal. And there's a little extra smoke here because he just signed with agent Bill Duffy, who represents Luka. In the NBA, those kinds of agency connections can lead to interesting team dynamics and future planning. We've seen that kind of synergy work before. Just look at how Rich Paul and LeBron built out parts of the Lakers roster over the past few seasons. It's not just about who's available, it's about who's connected. If Duffy wants to see more of his guys in LA, and the Lakers are open to bringing them, and then you've got the foundation for some interesting roster moves. Bringing in Payton might not just be about the player. It could be about building longer-term relationships that help the Lakers position themselves for future moves, especially if there's ever an opportunity to bring Luka West. Still, when we talk strictly basketball, Okogie continues to stand out as the best defensive guard available. He might not have the same name recognition as some of the others, but his skill set is exactly what this Lakers team needs. And here's the thing, last year in Phoenix, he quietly shot 38% from three. That's not nothing. If he can keep that up even somewhere in the 35 to 36% range, he becomes a legitimate two-way asset. You don't need him to be a sniper, just good enough that defenses have to respect him. That opens up the floor for guys like LeBron and Luka to operate, which makes the whole offense smoother. Okogie is kind of like Jared Vanderbilt, but for the guard position. He brings that same energy, that same defensive versatility, and that same question mark around his shooting. But we've seen how valuable Vanderbilt can be when he's healthy and engaged. If Okogie can mirror that impact in the backcourt, the Lakers could suddenly have one of the most balanced rotations in the league. Again, this all depends on the shooting holding up, but you can live with a 35% three-point shooter if he's locking down elite scorers on the other end. Defense creates extra possessions, and those add up. The Lakers don't need to overcomplicate things right now. They don't need to swing for the fences with a massive trade that strips their depth. What they need is to find the right role players that fill in the gaps. And it starts with moves like the one we're expecting with Milton. Cutting him may not seem like a big deal on its own, but it's the first domino. The question is who replaces him, because whoever that is, it's going to tell us a lot about where this team is headed strategically. There's also the conversation around the team's available salary tools. The biennial exception is still on the table, but the Lakers have to be careful with how they use it. Is there anyone out there really worth committing that exception to right now? Probably not. Even a guy like Okogie or Payton, too as good as they are defensively, might not justify that level of financial commitment. Those are the kind of signings you try to land on minimum deals, preserving flexibility in case something bigger becomes available down the road. That's what makes this such a delicate time for the Lakers. One wrong move and you're locked into a path that limits your options later. Even if the Lakers don't do anything flashy this weekend, this is the moment where we start seeing how serious they are about building around the core of LeBron, Luka, and Ayton. You've already got the offensive engine. You've got your playmakers and scorers. What you need now is the connective tissue, the players who make everyone else's job easier. That's why guys like Okogie, Payton, too, or even someone like Amir Coffey could be in play. They're not going to sell jerseys or light up highlight reels, but they're going to win you games in March, April, and hopefully June. So keep an eye on what happens after Milton is waived. That's the signal. That's the window where the Lakers are expected to make their next move, even if it's a subtle one. The front office is already working. The calls have been made, the conversations have been had, and now it's just about execution. This weekend might just be the beginning. What makes this whole situation even more intriguing is the subtle timing behind it all. If you've been following NBA off-seasons long enough, you know the rhythm by now. Teams rarely pull the trigger on significant roster decisions during the actual summer league games. That period is more about evaluation, observation, and informal discussion. But right after summer league, that's when front offices shift into go mode. That's when you start hearing about finalized contracts, trades being revisited, and depth moves falling into place. The Lakers, like most high-functioning franchises, know how to navigate that timing. And it really feels like they're positioning themselves to make one of those calculated, smart moves right now. Let's take a deeper look at the current roster construction and where exactly the Lakers can benefit from a move like this. With Luka and LeBron anchoring the offense, and Ayton adding inside presence, the starting five already has the bones of a top-tier attack. Austin Reeves continues to grow in his role and has proven to be a reliable playmaker and secondary scorer, so the scoring core is already intact. The real vulnerability lies on the defensive end, specifically with stopping dribble penetration and guarding opposing backcourts effectively. Last season, that point-of-attack defense was a glaring hole, and it showed up most painfully in playoff scenarios. when opposing guards were slicing through the defense far too easily. So when the Lakers say their top off-season priority is point emphatic defense, that's not just front office PR. That's a clear and direct response to what hurt them last season. And if you're serious about improving in that area, Josh Okogie is the name that makes the most sense. He's young, he's athletic, he's battle-tested in playoff environments, and he brings the exact skill the Lakers are currently lacking. Sure, his offensive game isn't polished, and there are concerns about consistency from beyond the arc. But again, that's not what you're bringing him in to do. You're bringing him in to do the dirty work, to defend the opponent's best guard every night, to dive for loose balls and rotate on a string. Every team that's made a deep playoff run over the last decade has had players like that. The Lakers need theirs. There's another layer to all of this that often gets overlooked, and that's chemistry. Plugging in a big name isn't always the best idea if it disrupts the team's rhythm or hierarchy. With guys like Okogie or Payton, you're bringing in players who know their role, embrace it, and won't get in the way of the stars. That's invaluable. When you have a locker room with heavy hitters like LeBron and Luka, the last thing you need is ego clashes or players looking for more touches than their role allows. What you want are selfless defenders, hustle guys, team-first players. Okogie fits that mold perfectly. He's not going to demand shots. He's going to go out there and guard the other team's best player. That's it, and in today's NBA, that's a luxury. It's worth mentioning that the Lakers don't have unlimited financial flexibility. They have tools like the biannual exception, but they need to be smart about when and how they use them. The biannual isn't a hammer you just throw around. You want to save it for someone who's clearly worth the cost. And if that player isn't on the market right now, it might be best to hold off. That's where veteran minimum deals come into play. A player like Gary Payton or Josh Okogie on a vet min contract is a huge win. You're maximizing value without compromising future cap flexibility. And when you're a franchise that's always flirting with big moves, that flexibility is crucial. You want to be able to make a bigger swing at the trade deadline if needed, or be in the mix for buyout candidates down the line. Another name that's floated into the conversation recently is Amir Coffey. He's a different type of player, taller, more of a wing, but still brings that defensive versatility the Lakers are clearly targeting. At 6'7", he gives you another switchable defender who can slide between the 2-3 and even small ball 4 in the right matchup. He doesn't have the same defensive intensity as Okogie or the championship pedigree of Payton, but he's steady, low maintenance, and capable of fitting into different lineups without disrupting flow. Again, this is about roster balance. It's not about the flash. It's about building a complete unit. But let's bring this back to what started the whole conversation. Shake Milton. His departure, whether it happens on Saturday or soon after, is the tip of the iceberg. This move signals that the Lakers are ready to adjust the rotation. Milton wasn't a terrible fit, but he didn't bring what the team ultimately needs, especially with their guard depth being as shaky as it's been. By waiving him, the Lakers not only create a roster spot, but also send a message they're not standing pat. They recognize where the weaknesses are, and they're prepared to make the tough calls to fix them. Now, do I think a major trade is coming in the immediate aftermath? Probably not. The Lakers aren't likely to jump into a multi-team deal or offload draft assets unless something significant is on the table. But what I do expect is a small series of deliberate moves that bring more balance and flexibility to the roster. First, waive Milton, then sign someone like Okogie or Payton. And from there, keep monitoring the market. Keep having those conversations. There's no need to rush into something massive, but that doesn't mean you sit still either. There's also been some buzz that DeAnthony Milton might be more inclined to join the Golden State Warriors. He's got history there, and if that's where he feels he has unfinished business, then it might be hard to convince him otherwise. Still, his connection to the Lakers from his draft days could make a return to Los Angeles appealing. It really depends on what kind of role is being offered and how quickly he wants to sign. But if Milton ends up off the table, Okogie becomes even more appealing. And again, based on what we know about the Lakers' priorities, Okogie just checks all the boxes. This is also where scouting and player development come into play. Okogie isn't a finished product defensively, but that doesn't mean he can't improve. We've seen it with other Lakers before, players who come in with questions about their offensive game and slowly develop into competent shooters. Jared Vanderbilt is a perfect example. He's been working hard on improving his shot, and if he can hit even 35% from deep, he suddenly becomes a much more dangerous player. The same applies to Okogie. If he can just be league average from 3, the rest of his game is already there. And the beauty of it is you don't need him to carry the offense. He just needs to be good enough to make teams think twice about leaving him open. Let's not forget either that we're talking about a team that could be averaging over 120 points per game with its current defensive core. LeBron, Luka, Ayton, Reeves, there's enough firepower to keep defenses honest. What this team lacks is the kind of consistent perimeter defense that makes life difficult for elite guards. Think about the types of players they're going to see in the playoffs, guys like Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Stephen Curry. You need someone who can stay in front of them, fight through screens and contests without fouling. That's where Okogie shines. That's why this move makes sense. There are always those who will argue for waiting, for saving the cap space, for being patient. And yes, patience matters, but so does timing. And right now, with the summer league ending and the offseason entering its next phase, this is the moment where smart teams act, not recklessly, not impulsively, but decisively. The Lakers are at a point where they don't need to make a splash. They just need to make the right move. And sometimes the right move is the one that doesn't make headlines, but pays off when the games actually matter. So keep watching. The Milton news might seem minor, but it's a precursor to something. It opens the door. And once that door is open, the Lakers will have the opportunity to bring in a player who truly fits their needs. Whether that's Okogie, Peyton Coffey, or someone else entirely, the goal remains the same: build a roster that's ready to win now while also being flexible enough to adapt throughout the season. This weekend may not bring fireworks, but it could bring the kind of strategic clarity that championship teams are built on. Because at the end of the day, this is about more than just one move. It's about setting the tone for the rest of the off-season. It's about showing the fans, the players, and the rest of the league that the Lakers aren't just coasting, they're planning, they're adjusting, and they're ready to compete. This is the phase where you separate the reactive teams from the proactive ones. And the proactive ones are usually the ones still playing in June. Before we continue, we ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Lakers updates. Moving on, the NBA world is buzzing with whispers of a potential blockbuster move involving the Los Angeles Lakers and rising star FRANZ Wagner. Although nothing has been officially confirmed, rumors are flying that the Lakers are gearing up to add Vagner to their roster, a move that could shake up the league and electrify fans in Los Angeles and beyond. Vagner, who has steadily built a reputation as a versatile forward with impressive skills on both ends of the floor, would be a thrilling acquisition for the Lakers. Known for his basketball IQ, shooting ability, and defensive tenacity, Vagner fits the mold of the modern NBA player capable of stretching the floor, while also providing solid defense and playmaking. If the Lakers manage to secure him, it could signal a strategic pivot in their rebuilding efforts, or an aggressive push to return to championship contention. The Lakers, a franchise with a rich history and a passionate fan base, have been searching for the right mix of talent around their superstar core. Adding Vagner could bring fresh energy and depth to their lineup, offering flexibility and new tactical options for their coaching staff.